Okay, welcome to the second unit in the basics course, and this time we're going to be talking about points, lines, and polygons, and how they relate to three-dimensional objects and the creation of three-dimensional graphics. And so basically, the first thing to know is that basically all of your objects are created based on polygons. All of your polygons are created based on lines and points. And this is going to make a lot more sense when we actually look at the interface once again. Okay, once again, here is the four quadrants that you're used to from the program. And so top view, back view, left view, and perspective. And so what we're going to talk about today is points. Now, points are basically coordinates in space, and space has three dimensions. Now, these panes only have two dimensions each, and so we're going to demonstrate that in a very dramatic way now. Now, if we're in the Create tab, and we're in point mode, we're going to go down to where it says points, and we're going to turn on the points device. So when this is there, the first place I click will create a point. So I'm going to put one right here. So I'm going to left click on that, and there's a point, which is like a star in space, and you'll find it's very much like that. Okay, now if I were to click somewhere else, it would move that point. It's slightly different than some of the other tools. Now, if I were to left click, I can create a second point. And so I can create as many points as I want. Now notice, in the top view, we're seeing a pattern here. However, the pattern is not repeated down here. That's because here, we're looking at it from a different dimension. So if I left click down here, I'm creating points in a different dimension. And here, a different still. Now notice, if you're looking at this from either of these panes, you see a completely different pattern. That again is why you have to rely on all of them and not just one. So if I go over here to perspective view, like we showed you in last video, if I look around these things, now we see that those are points in three-dimensional space, and this is what you use that for, to kind of give yourself a reality check. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get rid of all those points. Now they happen to all be selected. Now if you wanted to deselect a point, you would come out of point mode and you would click on that one point, like that. In this case, I want to keep it selected, so I'm going to shift key and select it back. Now what I want to do is I want to get rid of all of them. So what I'll do is, they're already selected now, but if they weren't, let me show you a trick. If I draw a box around all of the points, now this is a right-click move. If you right-click and draw a box, it will deselect everything it finds. If you left-click and draw a box, or a lasso again, it selects them. Then I just hit the delete key, and they're gone. Okay, so points. Still on points, I'm going to turn points on again and do one other thing. Now, if you want to create a polygon, I'm going to create a point here, a point here, a point here, a point here, and a point there. All right, so now we have a number of points. Now, I deliberately left them all on one plane. I'm going to turn off points mode, so those are your points all on one plane, and I'm going to deselect them because this is kind of important to show you. If I were to select one of those points, like so, by left-clicking on it, and then hold down the Shift key and select another one, and another one, and I were to go over here and click on this button that says Make Polygon, you will see that that will create a polygon, and in this case a triangle, based on the points that I selected. Now if I hit Control-Z and undo that, and then I go back and deselect these points, if I were to select this one, and let's say this one, and this one, I have a feeling I would get a very different type of shape. If I make polygon, I get something like that, and that is not particularly useful because that includes what I call impossible geometry. So I'm going to Control-Z that, and I'm going to deselect all those. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to select them in the order that they most naturally want to be in, which is like this. Then make polygon, and that is the shape that I have. Now notice that if I look it up here, it's a two-dimensional polygon. Now there's one thing about this is kind of unusual. If I turn this around, it disappears. And that is because this particular polygon, in fact all polygons by nature, only have one side. Now isn't that crazy? Now here's a funny thing. If I were to go into Polygon mode and I were to hit the F button, it makes it go away. And then if I turn it around, there it is again. F, and there it is again. The reason why that happens is because all polygons are by their nature one-sided unless you deliberately specify that you want them to be double-sided. And normally, you actually don't have any real reason to do that most of the time. I'm just going to, spoilers there. All right, but back to the business here. A polygon, if I go back to points mode, you see that the polygon is made up of points. And if I go to move, modify move, I can move that. And if I go into edge mode, and I select an edge, and go to move, I can move the edge. And of course, if I'm in polygon mode, I can select the polygon and move the whole thing. Move, and I can do the whole thing. So basically this polygon is made out of points and edges or lines. So if I were to then go on to the next step, I'm just going to delete this. If I then go back to create, I'm going to create a ball. So if I create a ball, and a ball has length, width, and, well actually that's backwards here. This will be length, width, and depth, or height. So that's a ball. Now notice if you look over on the perspective view, you can see that that's a ball. Now you'll also notice that the ball is made up of polygons. So if I turn off ball here, if I go into point mode, I can select a point there, and if we back up we can see that there's actually 2 points selected. I can click off that, and of course modify move. If I move that point, I stretch out that part of the geometry. I can also go into edge mode and select an edge and turn off the one that's down here that I can't see. And if I try to move that edge, same thing, I start affecting the geometry. And finally, if I go into polygon mode, I can select an entire polygon. In this case, I just have to click on left click on the ones I don't want. Once you select one, you can click on it again, makes it go away. Click on it once, selects it. Then you click on the ones you don't want, and then there it is. So now if I move that polygon, get that effect there. So that's how all three-dimensional objects are created. Points, lines, and polygons. And we'll talk about primitives in the next movie.